Welcome to the Nourishment Mindset podcast, your guide to good food, good health, and a good life. And now, here's your host, Nutrition Network advisor and author of the Nourishment Mindset, Dixie Huey.
All right, good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Michael Kaye with the Center for Functional Health, and I am so happy to bring with you today an interview Dixie Huey. She is the author of the Nourishment Mindset. Absolutely love this book. Couldn't wait to speak to you. I read this book. I reached out to you, and I said, please come on. I have so many more things to discuss with you. I loved your sassiness in the book. I love that you're right to the point, no holds barred. So welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you on.
Thank you, Dr. Kaye. It is a true honor.
So let us start from the beginning, because we all have this journey on how we got to where we are today. So can you share a little bit like how you got here and what was the real change? Something happened that moved you from one side of health to the other side of health.
Yes. So I would say that something is probably two some things. So meaning, if I rewind all the way back, as a child and a teenager, I was obsessed with ballet, and I was born to parents who tend to put on muscle and are not ballet thin. So this for me, because I'm so determined and because I had such a passion for dance, that's what I wanted to be, a prima ballerina. And it didn't really help to say, well, dear, you don't really have the genetics. I was so determined, I made the genetics, which unfortunately, joking aside, means severe eating disorder territory. And I to this day don't know how I was able to keep up the regimen of hours and hours a day of dancing, but I think that was just, a blend of childhood energy and just pure, absolute delight. If any of your audience has ever studied Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, the sort of art of flow, that's in my life, just being in that state of flow. So that probably kept me there for a while, but I was a sick chick. And I realized through the help of someone who I looked up to that I ultimately had to make a choice between dancing and living. So thankfully, I chose living. Anorexia, I think, has the highest death rate of any mental disorder. So I feel really grateful for her mentorship and also just for my own awakening to say this is leading nowhere. So I have to stop doing the thing that I most love in order to live and find more things that I love. So that's a heavy hit for a teenager, but thankfully that happened. And I embraced at that time, because this mentor was someone that I looked up to. She was a prima ballerina and she was a strong chick and she lifted weights and she had the genetics. But after she got me eating again and lifting weights, I started to feel good. And I wanted to continue to feel good. And that's what helped me decide that I had to make this decision. And so then I, lived several decades, or a couple decades, I should say, rather, very interested in health, teaching fitness, doing a lot of calorie counting, kind of tiptoeing on this balance beam of calories. So I would say I was much better, but I was still not free of the mindset of someone with an eating disorder. Even though I didn't appear to have that, I still was struggling. And I happened to end up in the wine industry, which is kind of crazy because the wine industry is the food industry, which means you're eating and drinking for a living. So on one hand, I was really happy about that, but on the other hand, I was still sort of struggling. And as I, got out of my 20s into my 30s, I was building my business. I was injured a lot. And now I know this because I was lacking nutrient density, vitamins, minerals, et cetera, from all these decades of calorie counting. And I was getting pudgy and I had this business. And again, I had to sort of experience this awakening. And I read some books by Nina Teichol's Big Fat Surprise Dr. Kate Shanahan, Deep Nutrition, and it was like this thing I could no longer unsee. I realized, oh my gosh, I've been doing everything wrong. I may look okay on the outside, but I'm malnourished on the inside, and this is why I'm injured all the time, and this is why I can't run, which makes me mentally a little bit crazy because exercise is one of my outlets. So that was that number two. So I mentioned the number one, the number two, and the number two was so profound for me that after I healed myself, I decided that I had to give up my 20-year career in the wine and food industry, go back to school again, and become a health coach. So that's how I got to where I am now. A lot of failing, a lot of trial and error. But the end route, the path I want to be on is vitality.
Excellent. I mean, there's no such thing as failing. We call it experimenting, right? So
Right.
Some experiments went well, some experiments didn't go so well. We learn from it, and then we do another experiment. Both you and I are from that nutrition network. We both are certified through that group. It's a great group. I really enjoyed a lot of their presentation. I thought they just did a wonderful job. It was excellent. You shared in the book, so I want to paint a picture for people on how far you've actually come, because we're sitting here and we're seeing a person of great vitality. But you shared something in the book about how many laxatives at one time you were taking. Do you want to share that number?
I do. So I'm holding up 10, not to mean 10 laxatives. This stands for multiples of 1,000. So at a minimum, and that's probably a conservative estimate, 10,000 laxatives. Wow. And that probably started at age, that's what I call failed anorexia. I just couldn't keep starving myself, so I started binging. Now I know why, brain chemistry. And I couldn't pull the vomit trigger, so I turned to laxatives, in the beginning, just like any addict, it's just a few. Oh, wow, I lost 3 pounds. Unfortunately, at the time, I didn't know I didn't lose anything. It's just water and electrolytes. But as with anything that you are addicted to, you need more of the substance to get the effect. And so 3 turned into 10, turned into 24. Packs of, y'all probably don't know this, packs of X-Lax, or at least 20, 30 years ago, came in 24. So I was up to about 96 a day. So 4 packets of laxatives a day. And that math, 100 laxatives a day, you do that for a few years, that's how you get to 10,000. So it ain't pretty. It's what I call butt bulimia, but it's a real thing.
And you talk about, that fact that, a person looks a certain way, therefore our society thinks therefore they're healthy, right? If they're thin, they must be healthy. And we'll get a lot of people in the office who are thin or who are vegetarian or vegan, and you know what, not so healthy, right? So just because a person looks a certain way doesn't mean that physiologically, cellularly, that they are that way. So can you talk a little bit about the odd relationship that we have with food, like how we grow with food, our relationship with food, how that we need to be full, and how that actually changes when we change the food that we eat?
Yes, that's a tremendous question. And you can do a timeout thing if I start rambling. Because that's a big question.
Go.
So the thing that was my kind of key takeaway, if I can, look back on decades of doing things wrong and where I am now, is this focus on calories. So I'm just doing math all day long. And I said, 96 laxatives a day. I'm probably doing the math about that many times a day. What did I have again for breakfast? So I'm never present in the moment if I'm sitting in a history class or something at that age, because I'm always doing calorie math. Never did I think of the value of the food on the plate. Not that I was eating out of plates then, it was more grabbing, but theoretical plates. So the key takeaway is the nutrient density of the food. So what am I eating and what is it bringing to me? What is its benefit? In the same way that you would I don't know, buy a house. You know, does this house fit my needs? Is this the correct investment for me? You know, I had never been taught to think of eating that way. It was just calories. So therefore, jelly beans and an apple, 100 calories, same thing, right? Or jelly beans and steak, same thing. And so that's the big one for me. I mean, that's the heart of the nourishment mindset, is this new lens, not of calories, but of nutrient density, because that changes everything from a brain level. Because as a chica with an eating disorder, I just thought, well, I'm not starving myself enough and I lack self-control, therefore I binge and I just need to try harder. It never occurred to me that, well, maybe this cycle, this perpetual cycle, can be broken by actually nourishing myself, calming the brain, and not being nutrient deficient, and then maybe the cravings aren't there, the desire to binge isn't there. So it's not an issue of I'm a bad person and I lack control. It's that my brain needs nourishment.
So how do you feel about the word willpower then?
Willpower is fascinating, right? The word willpower, that is not my favorite word, I'll be honest. I like determination as a word. It's not, we still have to have a framework, a health framework that, it's going to be different for each person, but what is going to set the path for achieving whatever it is we're looking to achieve, or whatever lifestyle we're looking to have. And I say framework because, again, it's not this balance beam of calorie, tightrope type style, but it's just, here are the things that I do for my health. Willpower to me sounds like a fight. I'm gonna have the willpower. I don't want to eat that dessert, or, versus, I always say the best defense is a great offense. So if someone's dealing with cravings for foods that are not helpful to their health journey, my first question is, well, are you nourished when you have those cravings? Is it an emotional craving, or perhaps, and in a lot of cases, it's a physiological craving because someone has been restricting. And therefore the brain is firing off ghrelin, to name one, to say, grr, eat. So how do you compete with your brain? Willpower against my brain's gonna win.
Right. I mean, I think there's a myriad of factors. I know when we start out with our patients, because we help them to create that nutritional protocol, I know I'm a little bit in trouble when they go, well, do I get a snack? Right. So when that's the first question, and but that's a process that's been taught to us. You talk about the framework actually starts when we're in kindergarten, and there's time where we get a snack. And as when we get home from school, there's the after school snack. And at nighttime, there is another snack before we go to bed. So that's the framework that many of us grow up in, and that's kind of hard to break because that is a habit. So I can see the frustration on both the patient's side and then the practitioner side, right? So you try to work around, like, okay, when you want the snack, are you truly hungry? Are you just tired? Are you procrastinating? Are you stressed? It can be hormonal driven, it's neurotransmitter driven. There's so many factors into, I just want a snack. And then we talk about the framework, but the framework, we need information, and the information that we get from the internet, and then sometimes you get information from your doctor, depending on who you go to, the information differs all the time. That's why I think in nutrition, there's a nuance and there's a baseline, and you write in your book that, we know more now than ever before, yet we're more metabolically challenged than ever before, and 20% of our children are obese. So can you talk about, like, why you think our children are obese? Is it what they're eating in school? I think that's one factor. Home, another factor.
Yes. So before I answer that, I would like to say that a word that I like even less than willpower is snack.
You get a lot.
That being said, I would never say to a client, you cannot snack, you must starve yourself until the next meal. The point is, meal one, or the meal prior to the snack, was not nourishing enough, really. Snacks can be a fine bridge as we're getting more metabolically healthy. But this snacking thing, if you look at other cultures, which I look heavily upon France and the nourishment mindset because I spend a lot of time there, but like adults do not snack. Like, on dit, ça n'existe pas. That doesn't exist. School children have a goûter. They have a little snack after school, but adults would never do this. It just is not part of the culture. So to bridge that to the answer to your question, the whole idea of children and obesity, this is just sad. Some things are maddening. This is sad. And I will share that when I was in college, and I'm 45, so this is a long time ago, about 25 years ago, I was writing my senior thesis, and it's admittedly nerdy title, A Biopsychosocial Model for Treating Childhood Obesity. And I found that sucker while I was writing my book, The Nourishment Mindset. And it was so depressing because, well, it was funny on one hand, because I'm like, oh, I've come back to my true nerdy self. So here I am, because I had that career in the wine industry for 20 years, but here I find myself back. But the thing that got me is just how much worse the numbers are. So I should know what number I cited for childhood obesity back then. If I had to guess, it might be 10, 11%. But as you said, it's now 20, and those stats are pre-COVID, y'all. So it's not going to be 20, it's going to be worse. So why is that? It's myriad of reasons, of course. But if I had to point to the number one reason, it is what is in the food, and I'm doing quotes because a lot of what kids are eating is not even food. It is what I call recipe for ultra-processed foods. It's grains and fillers sprayed with glyphosate, add in sugar, or even worse, high fructose corn syrup, add in the worst of the worst, seed oils, and then you get your additives, your preservatives, all that. So I argue that ain't food. It sort of maybe looks like food, but it is delivering, as we talked about earlier, nothing in terms of nutrient density. And so a lot of kids are just eating this ultra processed faux food garbage. They're never actually eating food. So to me, that's the number one driver of childhood obesity. And again, I understand there's myriad factors, kids spending more time looking at screens, less time moving. You mentioned, Dr. Kaye, that, what's served in schools. Well, that's exactly what I just described in my recipe for ultra processed food. So to me, again, number one driver is that just horrendous. It's not, I shouldn't even call it a recipe. It's just a garbage can of subsidized crap. And that's what we feed our students at school. And for some students, that's some of their main source of food in a day. So again, lots of factors, but that's the number one. I'm kind of the gal that likes to get to the root cause, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think there's economic issues as well, and sometimes you're right. That's the only food that they get during the day, and we know that is often wrought politically of who gets their foods into the hands of the students into schools, right? So we've seen that stats all the time where it's like, it's just not healthy food. It's better than having no food, but it's just not healthy food. And I remember, I'll take you back even a long time ago, in junior high, cooking was one of your classes. And I don't think people cook today. I don't think, unless you know how to cook, want to cook, and teach your kids to cook, most people don't cook, right? So it's easy to grab those foods. It's just often, I think those foods are not the healthiest choices. So, I think that creates a lot of the problems that people say they have no time to cook. And we hear that a lot, and yet cooking is really important. Now, you brought up one thing that, you talk about grains and the glyphosate and stuff like that, but how many years have we known that grains are good for us? And I think, there's a time and place. And obviously you can get your grains with less glyphosate. I think that's great. I think some people respond well with grains. I think it depends on their blood sugar. I think it depends on, their gut, how they do it. But for how many years we've been told that, grains are great, and that's what we eat for breakfast. So somebody will say to you, okay, so I can't have my cereal, what can I eat for breakfast? So can you share with us like what you eat for breakfast?
So just to clarify, I am not anti-grain. I think for people who are metabolically unhealthy, it's a avoid or drastically minimize. For someone who's metabolically healthy, they want to enjoy that. And, I would just say try to find an organic source, because then you're not eating Bayer's glyphosate, which is not good for anyone. So it's always the how too, right? How is it grown? How is it processed? That's something I learned from working with farmers for 20 years in the wine industry. But breakfast, okay. So breakfast is fun, right? Because food marketers have told us, oh, it's the most important meal of the day, and you need to get your energy up, and you need to eat cereal and toast, and by the way, grains. And what are we really eating? We're eating filler sprayed with glyphosate. So that's not healthy. Now, if someone who's metabolically healthy wants to do some organic oats and that kind of thing, good. So again, I just want to give an example of if that's working for you, awesome. I tend to work with people who have either chronic conditions to reverse and often have weight to lose. So starting your day with a blood glucose spike from grains is not going to help you. So what do I think is the perfect thing for breakfast? Well, I guess I should say it's like, what's the perfect exercise? The thing you're gonna do. But to me, if I could just pick and I could magically make everyone love eggs, I would say eggs. Eggs to me, they're what I call nature's veritable vitamin. We're all swallowing all kinds of vitamins and supplements and all this stuff, but like eggs, man, they have it all.
Sure.
So eggs cooked in olive oil, butter, palm oil. You can do so much with eggs, but eggs for any meal, not just breakfast.
But doctors are still saying to their patients, cut out the eggs. That's why you have high cholesterol. Right?
Yes, right. Dietary cholesterol versus blood cholesterol. So the real book to get into this is Nina Teichol's Big Fat Surprise, because she spent 10 years writing it. But
I definitely recommend that book. I think people really need to, instead of recommend that book to patients and clients can read it, I think some of our docs need to read that.
Oh my gosh, everyone needs to read that.
It's just giving the same statement of, eating cholesterol equals cholesterol, and it just doesn't work like that. So, that's why at our clinic, we take like a deep dive into the cholesterol panels, right? Not just what their count is, but like a deep dive into what their apolipoprotein B looks like, lipoprotein little a looks like. We want to see their lipoprotein insulin resistance score. There's a lot to go into it. Than just, hey, here's your cholesterol, because it's just a count. It really doesn't help us move them forward, just that count. So I think it's really important to look at that number. One thing I want to talk about is, you mentioned in your book, like, how do you deal with friends who are not following our protocol? I mean, I got my way of dealing with it. I think my friends are just used to the way I eat anymore when we go out. But, going out's hard, and, people want to eat whatever they want when they go out. So how do you share with your clients, like, hey, you've been doing well, you're going to go out, what are you going to do?
Right. So it's always, going out is a celebration, it's a tradition, it should be fun. But back to the word framework, so what I counsel most clients, not everyone's different, but this is just the majority who are, those who are not metabolically ideal, looking to become more so, is it's not quite flip the food pyramid, what I call in my book the piece of shit food pyramid, but it's close. So if you build your meal, think of it as like an orchestra, right? Build your meal around your protein source. So whatever that might be for you, it could be the fish special, it could be a steak, chicken. It's going to be a little bit harder if you're vegetarian. Maybe it's eggs. Maybe it's a plant-based source of protein. And then add color and nutrient density through vegetables, and then make sure that whatever you're ordering is cooked in a natural fat. So again, avoiding those inflammatory seed oils. And you could just, most restaurants, that's the other thing. This is really depressing, but even the finest restaurants cook in inflammatory fats. So it's an individual choice. You know, if it's once in a while and you don't want to be a buzzkill, the person with the qualifiers on the menu, you could just enjoy the meal that I just described, kind of building from that framework. Or you could ask, hi, you know, I really prefer that my X protein source be cooked in a natural fat. So it's going to be the person's choice as to how they want to navigate a restaurant menu. But again, if you go into it with a framework of, I need to prioritize my protein source, I'm going to add vitamin and mineral density through my vegetables, and maybe I'm going to ask the restaurant to please cook in a natural fat, I think you can enjoy it. And if you want to bite here and there of things that are outside the realm of that, just because you're celebrating, I would say the nourishment mindset says, enjoy yourself. Don't fret about it. You know, but if it's every night, that's going to be a problem.
Right. How do you feel about alcohol? A lot of people like to drink their alcohol, you know, have an alcoholic drink at dinner and all that.
Well, I worked in the wine industry for 20 years, so I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm anti-alcohol. I do love wine. I think it's just, you know, again, it's making choices. So if someone's drinking a margarita filled with sugar, and there goes my dog, Travis the Noob, a giant dog.
Yes.
That's gonna not be a metabolic gift to their body. But if you can choose a dry wine, or there are some dry spirits, I mean, I'm not gonna make a health claim for any alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things, like, and it's a celebration, an indulgence, hopefully something that can be enjoyed in moderation. There are all these studies out about wine being, you know, healthy and resveratrol. Wine lovers would love to believe that. Wine Spectator publishes articles about that all the time. But here's how I think of wine in my framework, because I love wine. I think of health as like a bank account, right? And so everything I can do to make a deposit into that bank account is going to grow my investment. And that's what I want to focus on, whether it's, you know, a mindful morning, nourishing food, exercise, sunlight, joyous hobbies, whatever it is. I put my wine in the withdrawal category. So I'm making a mindful withdrawal. And that means that maybe I can't make other mindful withdrawals, because perhaps that's my sort of focused withdrawal, and just try to balance that and have way more investments than withdrawals. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned a few times about oils. So can we talk a little bit about oils and kind of give people the framework of what oils are good and what oils are not good, and sometimes what's the best they can do and how they know they're getting good? You know, like, I love olive oil, but sometimes even the olive oil we get maybe is not the best olive oil.
Yeah, that can be cut. That's the annoying thing about.
You're trying to do your best, you know.
You really are. It reminds me of all these keto foods.
Yeah.
You know? And I always say to people, if it's got giant KETO on the front label, walk away, because you're just going to be spending more and paying for a lie. If it's got to try too hard, it's just marketing. And I can say that because I was a marketer for 20 years. So back to oils. And this is hopefully an interesting segue. A lot of these inflammatory PUFA, polyunsaturated fatty acid oils, have the American Heart Association little cute little red heart healthy. But that is also food marketing, and that is also BS. And here's why. That little heart means that it lowers, we talked about cholesterol, so it lowers your cholesterol. Okay, but at what price? And should we really even be focused on lowering cholesterol? You know, mother's breast milk is the highest cholesterol food. I don't think that Buddha, God, higher power is trying to kill babies by putting cholesterol in breast milk. Obviously, dietary and blood cholesterol, two different things. But there's this whole, I mean, I have a chapter in my book called Cholesterol Paranoia Syndrome. So to me, whenever I see those little heart healthy oils, I walk away. It's like keto bread, walk away. Those oils, it's the how, somewhat of them. It's the what as well. So what I like to offer to people is natural fat. Okay, what is natural fat? This is easily gleaned from nature. So butter is from cream churned. Olive oil, I used to have an olive oil client, you know, you're gently pressing olives. Avocado oil, same thing. These are fatty fruits, olives and avocados. So easy to massage the fat out rather, and have a wonderful product. It's the things like a soybean or a safflower seed, corn, cotton seed. You know, these are seeds. They're not vegetables. You know, rape seed is canola oil. You know, we have a naming problem with rape seeds. We're going to call it canola and heart healthy. But all of these oils, so-called, have to go through massive amounts of processing to become an oil. They don't start off that way. They were initially chemical solvents, like for cleaning engines and whatnot. And if anyone, I mean, these companies are proud of their processes. You can go on YouTube and search for how to, you know, create a seed oil or heart healthy oil, and they will show you when this sludge comes out of the first processing, it's black gunk. It looks like what was in my yard after our last hurricane, just muck. You know, and then it's got to be bleached and deodorized and purified and colorized and all of this stuff. So that's not a natural product. And so that's why it's inflammatory. There are many reasons, but this is another one of those, put it in the bucket of ultra super duper processed foods. And this, sure, a tiny amount of polyunsaturated fatty acids is fine in the diet if you look at traditional cultures. But these are making up something like 80% of the American fat consumption, and they're horrible for human health in every way. So that, to me, if your audience wants to do one thing and one thing only, it's avoid this stuff like the plague. It is just, and it's impossible to completely avoid. So you have to have a little bit of self-grace. It's going to creep in, but just don't put it in your house, right? That's your framework. I don't bring that stuff in my house. And so that does mean you need to flip whatever nutrition label over, because a lot of sauces, packaged goods, dressings, all of this stuff, you know, it's better to just whip up your own, or what you said, olive oil. So olive oil, as you mentioned, so I don't forget that piece, you know, can be cut with other oils. We don't have great regulation in terms of that. So you really want to look for, if possible, the extra virgin olive oil, because there are more regulations as to how you have to sort of honor the olive, if you will. And there's a tremendous book, if anyone wants to do a deep dive. It has a saucy name. It's called Extra Virginity.
Nice.
And it's all about olive oil and its health benefits and all of the food fraud. And, you know, if you're a nerd like me, it's fascinating.
Like, and how do you feel about walnut oil?
You know, I know less about walnut oil. How do you feel? I mean, walnut is a fatty nut, so I feel like that's probably on the go list. But what do you think?
It's not bad. It just sometimes gives it a different taste.
Okay.
But it's not a bad oil. It's on the expensive side, but it's not a bad oil. More in a salad dressing, like you said, salad dressings can be very sneaky, right? So unless you're making your own salad dressing, that can be very sneaky. I do like the Primal Kitchen. I think they did a great job. Mark Sisson's, group. I think they did a wonderful job with their dressings. But other than that, I'm very, very careful. I try to stick to some olive oil. But sometimes it's just just the salad itself, and really not adding much to it. Lemon and vinegar, I mean, just simple, easy stuff is easy. So let's talk about, I know your love or lack thereof for the heart healthy stuff. You had a great chapter, like paragraphs on eggs and how we get duped into what's considered like free range and pasteurized, and the heart healthy label. Can you talk a little bit about one of my favorite foods, which are eggs?
Right, back to nature's veritable vitamin, these eggs. So the food marketers have, it's funny, right? Because in a way, I can't blame them, because eggs were demonized. And now it's, coming out, well, dietary cholesterol and blood cholesterol are not the same. Maybe you can have 2 eggs a week, to the gal who has 3 or 4, maybe more a day. It just depends.
Yeah.
But egg qualifiers, this is like the little heart, right? Except it's not a heart. It's different kinds of labeling. So there's everything from, there's a traditional egg. These are your least expensive eggs. And I'd rather someone eat those eggs than not eat eggs. So just to sort of qualify that. But there's all these different levels. So on one end of the spectrum, there's just, freaking eggs and styrofoam, the cheap stuff. Way out on the other end of the spectrum is what you were talking about, how you went shopping at a farm and got farm fresh eggs. And these are presumably from chickens that are pastured and eating insects and what they're supposed to be eating. And then you have all this stuff in the middle. And so one of my least favorite qualifiers is free range, because this word sounds like the chickens can go hang out where they want to, but it doesn't mean that. It means sometimes that the chickens have access to a window, meaning like I have a window right there, but I can't necessarily get out of it. So that's just food marketing BS and lying. So if someone is trying to optimize and has the budget to do so, we're looking for pastured. So the real free range is pastured. But why should we all have to work this hard to like play with words? That's just and I'm not one for like more regulation typically, but I don't like how food marketing companies are so easily able to dupe consumers, because the person buying free range is paying more. And I think most people buying free range think that those chickens are out doing their chicken thing in nature, and they're not. So it's not right, and it shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is. We just ask people to do an awful lot of extra work to be optimally healthy.
And do you prefer brown eggs over white eggs? Does that bother you either way?
Personally, no. I think, there's eggs. I mean, some ducks have blue eggs.
Yeah, so we like duck eggs, and we get turkey eggs as well. So
turkey eggs. Yeah. I was just talking about turkey eggs with someone. I don't think I've ever had one. So tell me.
It's great. It's very rich. It's very satiating. It's a bigger egg. It's a different color. It's a little bit higher in cholesterol compared to a chicken egg, but again, for me, it's about eating something that gives me energy. So I get energy and satiety, right? So when you talk about nutrient density, that's what's important to me. So when I eat, I want what I'm eating to provide me energy, because for me, the food is medicine and food is energy. And that's all calories are. It's just it's a way that we measure energy.
Yes,
unit of energy. So I say to folks, do you want to take in good energy or poor energy, right? So that's really what it comes down to.
It's a great way to say it.
What's that?
It's a great way to say it.
Yeah,
energy, that speaks to my woo-woo. I'm a yoga instructor, so
okay.
I'm all about good energy and good vibes.
Right, but it does, right? So I mean, what's good food. I mean, you really don't. I mean, I think people know for the most part what's good, what's not. We have near us Wawa food stores. Are you familiar with Wawa at all?
I am.
Okay, so Wawa is brilliant. I mean, you can go in and you can get a turkey hoagie. That's great, but you can also go in and get hard-boiled eggs. Right? You can get a sandwich, but you can also get a salad. You know, so they really did, I think, a wonderful job of catering to everyone. I think that's why people go there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because they can. So you can follow a nutritional protocol like you and I do and still go to Wawa and get something to eat.
Yep, you're making the best choice you can. My family travels a lot. We lived in our RV for a year after my professional midlife crisis, and I learned a lot about road food. Which gas stations and convenience stores have more nutrient dense items. It ain't gonna be perfect. It's not a pastured hard-boiled egg, but it's still an egg.
Right. And sometimes that Slim Jim is what it is, and that's it. You move on, right? You know, you wrote in your book, I'm going to quote this: small pantry leads to smaller booty. Shop more frequently and locally, slow down when eating, right? So can you share about your small pantry leads to smaller booty and that pantry clean out?
Yes, pantry sweep. So that's just me being goofy, but it is an observation, you know, spending a lot of time in Europe, specifically France. Like, we had our good French friends come over pre-COVID, and they spent about a week with us, and we don't even have a large pantry, but I didn't do this, but I would have loved to take them to like a traditional American home with a walk-in closet size pantry, just to film their faces. You know, what is this? You know, it's we go to Costco and we fill up the bed of the truck and we bring it all, you know, we haul it in because there's going to be a blizzard
Right.
next season, and we're no longer canning food. And, you know, and I'm sure I'm offending people, so I'm sorry. You can pick on me too. I have many things, but no, it's just that doesn't exist. Our house, our tiny house in France, has this closet, and in the closet is like the cleaning supplies, the tea and coffee, all of the plates, spoons, cutlery, etc. Everything is in there, and there's just this space, you know, well, maybe it's that big, for food. There is no freaking pantry because the culture doesn't, that's just not part of it. And I realize that's impractical. Not everyone here is going to be going to the market every day in the nearest town and filling, but it's just more something to think about. Like, what is in this pantry? You know, that's the real question. Is it food, you know, or is it ultra processed gunk? And so that's where the idea of the pantry sweep came in. So again, through the lens of nutrient density, walk into your walk-in size closet, take a look and say, each of these items, is this contributing to my health, or is this one of those withdrawals? And if it's a withdrawal, is a granola bar really worth it? I mean, I don't know, like a great Pinot Noir might be worth it, or like a fabulous bakery dessert maybe once in a while, or a good risotto, but like, really? So the whole idea of the pantry sweep is just to take that lens of nutrient density, literally go through your pantry and just sweep the stuff out that is not adding to your health. And most of that stuff is back to a word that I told you I hated, and that word is snack. It's not even a meal. So yeah, that's my feeling on pantries. I think if we could get rid of our walk-in closet size pantries, we could cut the size of our booties in half.
Mm-hmm. But you did say, because there would be a tendency for those who put the food in that bag to get rid of it, but you recommended something in your book which I absolutely love, and I thought, man, this is brilliant, and this is like, I'm like, this is why I have to speak to this person. You want to share with them what you recommended to do, or you just want them to read the?
No. Well, read the book, because there's all kind of crazy wackadoodle stuff. This is not like a diet book. This is pretty self-deprecating, as you know. But what I said about it, only an eating disorder person would say this, okay? You're gonna have to pee on, like, not just on the bag of stuff you're throwing out, I would pee in the bag. Because you're gonna be tempted, you know, maybe you went out to dinner, you had some wine, you had some cocktails, like, you're gonna come back and be like, I'm just gonna have one more granola bar. But if you peed on them, you're not as likely to enjoy them at that point. And that's, you know, that's it's tongue in cheek, but it's also sad because people with eating disorders do things like dive into other people's trash cans to indulge in foods that are off limits for them. So it's funny and it's sad all at once, but it's the truth.
And I love what you did with the book. As you can imagine, I read a tremendous amount. I read many diet books. I was overweight as a child. My nickname was
Really?
Oh yeah. My nickname was Pads. So, when I read your book, I'm like, okay, this is something easy for people to digest. No pun intended, right? Because you get a lot of these diet books, and it's like, okay, now you need to do this, and this, and you need to do this, and it becomes so overwhelming that you're like, you know what? Enough of this. I'm not going to do it. It's not even worth it. So, what do you say to your client who comes to you just so overwhelmed by the representation of the diet industry, and even the fitness industry? I was a personal trainer for many years. I'm a big movement guy. I think that's super important. That what they see online, they see the crazy fads on TikTok, they see Instagram, and what do you say to that patient that comes to you that's 20, 30, 40 pounds overweight, has been on several diets before, is just so overwhelmed, it's like, I can't even begin. And unfortunately, a lot of times as females, they are the ones who run the household. So now they got to cook for other people, and you want them to eat a certain way, when in reality, the whole family should be eating a certain way.
Yep. So this is life. And I do tend to work with middle-aged women, probably because I am one. And we have our own unique challenges and sparkles. But for any person who comes to me and says, people are coming to me not to, quote, get metabolically healthy from the inside. They're coming because they want to fit into a pair of jeans, or there's a wedding or a reunion or something, and that's fine. Whatever. That's a fine motivation. But I do try to emphasize metabolic health overall. And so it was something, actually, because you're a Nutrition Network alum also, Dr. Siwez, who happens to be here in Florida, who's a bariatric surgeon, said it in one of our lectures. And it turned my thinking completely upside down. I can never unhear and unsee this knowledge. It was, we don't lose weight to get healthy. We get healthy and then we lose weight.
Beautiful.
Well, repeat that, okay? Because really, as you know, what is happening is you're healing metabolically on the inside, and then the symptom of the extra weight is slowly alleviated. But that is not what the diet industry sells. And so a lot of my work, my work is three things. One, it's trying to understand the client, where he or she, where are you coming from? What are your motivations? What have you done before? Kind of what's in your head? Who are you now? And then step two is almost unlearning. So all these failed diets and all this shame, we talked about willpower. If I just had more willpower, my life would be better and I would fit into those genes. It's not willpower, it's nourishment. So kind of unlearning, relearning. And then one of my favorite aspects of what I do is it's kind of like detective work, food detective. So meaning, what are we doing now? What's working? What's not working? And so this is like the MBA in me. I'm looking for levers to pull. So a lot of people, and you mentioned the middle-aged woman, these are in a sandwich women, caring for the older generation, caring for the kids, a lot of them working, like literally pulled in so many different directions. So now I'm looking, of course, at what is being consumed for nourishment. A lot of this group does what I call DWE and drive-by eating. So drive-by eating is just kind of driving by the fridge and just grabbing something, never really sitting at a table. I'm sitting at my dining room table right now, which is why I have a wine fridge behind me. But the other thing, DWE, doing while eating, again, just taking bits of the kids' lunches, we're packing them and just never really self-nourishing, but just sort of taking the scraps. So that's a lever. A huge lever, as I'm sure is sleep.
Mm-hmm.
If your sleep sucks and your cortisol and other hormones are always elevated or out of wackadoodle, it's going to be very hard to lose weight and get metabolically healthy. And so the good news about, this, for me, at least, in working with people with this idea of pulling levers, huge lever, get the seed oils out of the diet. Another lever, focus on nutrient dense foods, but there's also sleep, sunlight. And so I'm trying to meet the person where they are without maybe being overwhelming, but you do occasionally get a client who's doing so many things right. And that's where we need to look at those other levers.
So how long does a client work with you? Do they work with you for 6 months, a year?
No, not usually. I don't offer any kind of, should I say, like package or anything like that. The way I do things is, I think this is just, there's a book I read that sort of helped me bridge between culinary marketing agency owner and private practice health coach, and it's called Halftime, and I highly recommend this book. It has nothing to do with nutrition. It has a lot to do with nourishing your soul, though, and it's from success to significance. So this book is about, I've had career one. This is just where I found myself. I'm just not fulfilled on a soulful level. So I need to find what I want to do in career two. And so whereas when I had my marketing agency, I was very necessarily focused on P&L and what client metrics were. And, I had to do that. I had employees, I need to offer them health stipends. It was just a different deal. Now I'm in that halftime, moved across the bridge, second professional life. And so the way I set out to sort of honor that is just, look, I'm going to make it really simple. You can do one visit. You can do multiple visits. Yes, of course, there is a better pricing if you're going to do multiple visits, but I want to meet people where they are literally. So some people just want a tune-up, and it's a one-time, 90-minute, hey, how you doing? Let's talk through this. Other people want a weekly check-in. And that weekly check-in might be 60 minutes for 4 weeks. And then it's like, well, we'll take it down to every 2 weeks, or maybe we'll do 30 minutes. And then it kind of trails off to 15. So I would say most people kind of come in strong, and then we just kind of taper off as needed. And then they'll appear 3 months later. I need a tune-up. And so the door is always open, is I guess what I should say. There is no sort of set route, because I feel like everyone is different. And also, gotta be honest, I don't take insurance. This is private pay. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that's okay. I mean, we do both, right? So the insurance world is a world that can surely beat you up as a practitioner. So I definitely respect that. What do you say to folks who around October, Halloween, moving into Thanksgiving, moving into Christmas and New Year's, and we see a lot of times where our patients, this is where they begin to spiral down. What tools can you share? I mean, we're going into summer, I get that, but what tools can you share? Because that happens quite often. It seems, and the time seems to go by so fast. So we're going to be in September before we know it.
Yes, that's an awesome question. I've never been asked that before, but it's a thing. I mean, I don't have up-to-date statistics, but years ago it was, the average American gains 7 pounds between Halloween and New Year's Day. So I don't know what that is. I can't imagine it's gotten any better.
No, it hasn't.
So I think for me, and for anyone I'm working with, I always say the best defense is an awesome offense. So a lot of people, most of us have been sort of surrounded by diet culture and calories in, calories out. I'm not saying that calories don't matter at all. You know, they count, but I just prefer not to count them. So in terms of getting specific with the holidays, DAZE,
Nice. I say that.
is really that offense. So let's not do what the pattern tends to be, which is I'm going to save room for whatever I'm going out and having fun. So I'm just not going to eat my eggs in the morning. Maybe I'll just nibble on lunch, and then I'm going to save room for whatever's coming at that party. You know, that's just setting yourself up for failure. It makes sense in a like restriction, calorie only mindset, but from like a brain and physiology mindset, it doesn't make any sense, because you're just pissing your brain off and you're mucking around with your hormone system, and then you show up at the party and you wonder why you have no willpower. You know, it's because you were mean to yourself. So again, best defense, great offense. So have a really nourished day, and then go to whatever holiday function thing and enjoy a little something, but don't get outside of the framework.
Right.
So, and again, if you can show up nourished, then you don't have all these hormones mucking your willpower. You're just you in a nourished state. And so that's a time of year to mindfully enjoy some things, but it also depends on your social life. So if you're a butterfly and you're going to several events per week, that's different than I'm doing 2 events in the season, you know? So if you're doing several events per week, you might want to think mindfully about, okay, I mean, there's all kind of strategies, right? That are not just nourish yourself before, but I'll pick one thing that is not my typical thing to eat, and I'll try it and I'll enjoy it. But it doesn't need to be an entire plate of stuff that is just going to derail your efforts and make it harder to nourish yourself the next day. And then that's the other thing on the flip end of that. So if you have overindulged, you know, some people will then severely restrict the next day, and now you're setting up a cycle. And there's always another party and another holiday. And it can be really easy to make that a pattern versus just like, all right, I slipped up at one party, moving on. Maybe I'll have a light first meal, but I'm just going to focus on, again, making those health account deposits. And that was a withdrawal. And we're just going to see it for what it is.
Beautiful. And I'd be remiss to not discuss with you your thoughts on exercise, because some people will say, well, since I know I'm going to eat X, I'm going to exercise more. And Weight Watchers had this wonderful thing where, like, the second 20 minutes after you did your first 20 minutes on a treadmill, if you did another 20 minutes, you'd add 3 more points. So people were trying to get, 40 minutes so they can add 6 points, which really doesn't make sense. There are a lot of people who will exercise because they know they're going to go eat something instead. So, and people often exercise too much or not exercising correctly. So what are your thoughts on exercise?
Right. Well, I am a fitness instructor, not just a yoga instructor. And I would like to say that exercise is a poor way to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a crazy person, because the fitness industry is selling burn those calories. I still hear fellow fitness instructors say, we're going to burn a lot of calories today. And that just creates that math, that, what I described for me, which became an obsession, just all day long, calories in, calories out math. So, to me, I'll give you a more concrete example. For a while, when I lived in San Francisco in my 20s, I coached triathlon team. And this was through Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, wonderful organization. And I saw triathletes gain weight. And how do you gain weight training for a triathlon? Well, you eat 2-day lunch. Right. And there's it's not just that, I firmly believe that we have, a system that is set up to tell us when to eat and when to lay off. So that's just this like beautiful thing in nature. It's not perfect, but a lot of things like those inflammatory fats, preservatives, we could go on and on, disrupt that functioning. So there's that, but then there's also the psychology of it. So I did this long workout. I'm going to treat myself. And that can backfire. It often does. So here's what I have to say about exercise. Obviously, I love it. I'm a fitness instructor. That's my happy place. But here's why we exercise. Hopefully for joy, because it's an awesome mood enhancement, and it can be a social thing or it can be a self-time thing, depending on what you're looking for. But also my favorite exercise benefit is never mentioned. It's insulin sensitivity. It's the opposite of the diabetes train. Sure. Insulin resistance. And then there's, if you're outside, you're getting free vitamin D. There's balance, there's muscle strength. There's all kind of wonderful benefits to exercise, but I'm just not putting weight loss in that bucket. And so if we can reframe the why behind our exercise and come up with some reasons to do it that have nothing to do with burning anything, to me, that's a much healthier relationship with exercise.
I agree. Exercise moves the needle on every system, neurologically, brain, endocrine, muscular, obviously, respiratory, cellular. I mean, it moves it on every physiological system in our body. Exercise is good. Obviously, the ultra exercising that we see now, there's some articles coming out now talking about that you can get AFib is big. We see the damage that's done to the joints, the knees, the lumbar spine, the hips, the ankles. The endothelial demand is just so grand on those people who exercise for long. So yeah, I mean, I think it's something that's absolutely beautiful, but needs to be done right. And I think that's why I think the investment in spending time with somebody to teach you how to exercise and what to do is important. And also, like, as our bodies change, so does our demands for exercise, right? So that also has to change, right? So what we did in our 20s, we can't do in our 40s, and how we train in our 50s, you're training for a different physiological system. So all that plays a fantastic role. So we covered a lot tonight. And again, your book was absolutely fantastic. So can you hold up your book? I have my copy here. You can hold up your copy. And, tell everybody where we can get that book.
Thank you. So there's two places to get this book. Amazon, if y'all have ever heard of that. Amazon will get it to you real quick for $19.95 for the paperback copy. There's also a Kindle copy. The other place to get it is on my website, my private practice site. And I can compete with Amazon on price. So I cannot compete with them on shipping speed, but what I can offer is a signed copy. So if you are, just giving a gift to yourself, or if you want to give a gift to a friend, the gift of nourishment, I'm happy to write a custom message or just simply give a signature. And that's a hand-packed, made with love item dropped off at the post office by yours truly. So those are the two ways, Amazon and favorfat.com.
Okay, and that's a great way to get in touch with you is favorfat.com. So if a client wants to work with you, can they go on favorfat.com and either make a discovery call with you or fill out a form or something like that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm pretty laid back, as I hope I have indicated in my sassy writing style. I call it straight talk if I'm marketing.
And it was great. I really enjoyed it. And again, I think it's something that anybody can read and start the process now without feeling overwhelmed. And that's what's really important, right?
Good. Yeah, because it's incremental steps. It's not perfection in a day. I'm not perfect. Oh my gosh, are we kidding? I love it when I get that question. So what is every day? Just like this? Yes, every day. I did a podcast on that recently. Yes, every day I wake up and everything's perfect and I have my routines and nothing ever strays and, no, BS. So no, the best way to get in touch with me is favorfat.com. There people can see links to everything. If you're an Instagrammer, it's there. If you're a LinkedIner, it's there. I have my email. I even put my phone number. please don't spam call me. No, I put it all out there. I want to help as many people as I can. And I do have a complimentary 15, 20-minute, just as you said, discovery call, because that's the other thing. If I'm not a fit for someone, because again, I don't take insurance, it's just private pay. I certainly don't want someone to have to feel like they're handcuffed to me. I'm either a fit or I'm not. And if I'm helping you, great, then you're happy to pay and tell your friends. And if it's not a good fit, then that's okay. You know, I wish you the best. And I even can recommend other people who might be a better fit for someone. You know, for example, full disclosure, I'm not someone to hire if you're a vegan. I don't have any expertise in that. I will disclose that I don't think that's a healthy way of eating. So I'm not your gal, but there are other gals and guys who can help you with that. And that's great.
Right. I agree with you. And our last question is, what book are you reading now?
Ooh, what book am I reading now? Okay. It's the book that I owe $1 in late fees on, and I went to renew it. And someone else has it on hold. So I am returning that sucker tomorrow, because it's not just racking up the late fees. I am preventing someone else. I keep rereading it, which is why I'm late with it, but it's called Living the Sutras. So this is the yoga instructor in me, and it's a great blend of sort of yoga philosophy meets modern day mindfulness and practice. And I love this book, and if I finish it tonight, great, but I'm turning it in tomorrow. I've learned a lot from it, not just from a day-to-day mindful living, but also how to be a better yoga instructor. And it's this cute little, it shouldn't have taken me this long to read. It's not even that tall, it's not that thick, but it's just, you got to reread the sections to really let it sink in. So I probably just need to go on Amazon and buy it, right?
There you go. help out another author, right? It's always good.
Exactly.
Always good. So thank you so much for coming on tonight. I really, really appreciate it. And everybody who wants to contact you, it's favorfat.com, right?
Yes, sirree, Dr. K.
So I really appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.